May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to help preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today I'm going to title this podcast, Neil deGrasse Tyson could improve his approach to talking about religion. Now, I know I already did one podcast with this, and I brought in a ChatGPT, which was very helpful. And the reason I'm doing it again is because I sort of would like to talk to him about this, and I think putting it in the title might give it some chance. However, the way they title things for YouTube is so offensive. It has to be aggressive, attacking, polarizing, competitive, nasty. I just think, I think he's not using the scientific method when he talks about religion. He's just, using his common sense or whatever, with his understanding of what it is, which is really and not what it is. He's talking about some section of it, some part of it, some tendencies in it, but it's a much broader topic of that. So that was my. I'll say a few things, but mainly I just wanted to say I wanted to talk to him about it. I think most people that listen to Cuke Audio podcasts have some sense that the word religion doesn't mean literally believing myths only. I mean, there's plenty of that. But I think probably a high percentage of listeners would be people who would rather not use the word religion. But I don't think we should give it up. I mean, Shunryu Suzuki used it quite a bit. He didn't think of it as a dirty word. But I know it is a dirty word. Actually, he would agree it's a dirty word. He even said Buddhism's a dirty word. Any word we attach to is a dirty word. In any word that we cling to, that is a dirty word. And the Bible says the same thing. It says, don't, one way or another, it says don't worship graven images. Thou shalt have no other God before me, or that sort of thing. Well, and I probably said this in the last one, but I loved that there was a Baptist minister who said he thought it was interesting in terms of all this hoopla about the Ten Commandments that people were worshiping a graven image that said not to worship graven images. I love that. Anyway, all right. So once again, what does religion mean? To me, it just means reconnecting with a bigger part of ourselves. That's a very poor way of saying it, but whatever we say will not be accurate. It's a Catholic priest said to me, it means, who's a very good friend, Father Hand. No, not Father Hand. Frost. Steve Frost. There's a lot about him on Q.com. He said, he said in answer to what is original sin, he said it's the separation of heaven and earth. So what is religion? It's the reconnection of heaven and earth. It's reconnecting with our big mind, is what Shunryu Suzuki would say, or is reconnecting with our divine nature. And if Neil deGrasse Tyson doesn't believe in any of that, that's fine. But it's not believing in, it is not limited to believing all these simplistic things. He only talks about in terms of when he uses the word religion. It would be as if in talking about science, I only referred to junk science. I mean, that's the way I look at it. And then said science is no good. It's a waste of time because, those people believe the earth is flat and there was no moon landing and that sort of thing. I know I'm repeating myself and I apologize. So I want to give you a few examples. One, my teacher, Shunryu Suzuki, said it was really, really essential for him to believe in absolutely nothing. Now, one reason I say that Mr. Tyson or Professor Tyson or Dr. Tyson is not using the scientific method is because he's going at the subject with his assumptions. He's not taking a step back and asking, what is it? What does it include? What's the meaning of this word? I mean, for starters. All right. And I would like to repeat here that to me, there is no possible conflict between religion as I understand it and science as I understand it. Both of them do not don't depend on a fixed set of truth. They are method. They are a method of thinking, a method of practicing, a method at looking at stuff. I think of science as a method at looking at the phenomena, and looking at everything from the point of view of space and time and what is it and, how does it, and measuring it and that sort of thing. And to me, religion has to do with, it's really hard to say. What's the, you can say so many things. It has to do with it has to do with phenomena, and it has to do with noumena, or however you pronounce that. It has to do with the relative world, and it has to do with the world, with the universe, the cosmos, beyond the relative. And it is a practice. It is not, it doesn't set up the goal. You don't know what it is. You have to discover it yourself through your own practice. There is no absolute set truth in our practice. That's the way I see it. Now there's a lot of encouraging truths, and we can look at what is karma and the Four Noble Vows and all that. But to go deeper, everything we're thinking, it goes beyond thinking. Now that's not just Buddhism. That's that's Christian mysticism. Let me ask ChatGPT for something from a Muslim mystic, or he could bring something from Rumi. Let's see what it suggests. Okay, I asked it, and here I'll tell you what it said. I mean, all I said was, I'm making a podcast on how the word religion stands for more than clinging to literal beliefs and myths. I want to give an example of non-literal mystical thought from a Muslim saint or Muhammad. And it answered, that sounds like a great direction for a podcast. I ask it not to do that, but anyway, a compelling example of non-literal mystical thought from within Islam can be found in the writings of Rumi, the 13th century Sufi poet and mystic. Here's a powerful quote. You notice I didn't mention Rumi, which is the first thing that came to mind with me. Here's a quote from Rumi. The truth, I love it too, right? It's great. The truth was a mirror in the hands of God. It fell and broke into pieces. Everybody took a piece of it, and they looked at it and thought they had the truth. That's great, huh? All right. Now, and ChatGPT, this points to the idea that no one has a monopoly on truth, and the ultimate reality transcends all literal belief systems. Perfect for what you're trying to convey. If you're looking for something directly connected to the Prophet Muhammad, there's this well-known hadith saying attributed to him. He who knows himself knows his Lord. This is widely interpreted in Sufi tradition as pointing toward an inner mystical path where self-knowledge leads to divine knowledge, not through belief in stories, but through direct personal experience. Would you like a few more quotes from other Muslim mystics like Al-Hallaj or Ibn Arabi? Yes. All right. Excellent. Here. Pardon me. Here are a few profound examples from key Muslim mystics whose teachings clearly move beyond literalism into the mystical, experiential, and symbolic. Al-Hallaj. He died in 922. A legendary Sufi martyr and mystic, famous for his bold expression of divine union. I am the truth. Well, all right, context. I can comment on that. Al-Haq is one of the names of God. Saying, I am the truth was a direct mystical assertion of unity with the divine beyond the separation of self and God. Oh, I see. When he said, I am the truth, it was Ana al-Haq. Al-Haq is one of the names of God. I am the truth. Literalists condemned him, but mystics understood this as the ego disappearing into divine presence. That's right. And, it's very, very common for holy people to say, I am God. I don't think it's a good idea because I think most people will misunderstand. Now, Ramana Maharshi, who was not at all a theist, said the ultimate spiritual statement is, I am that I am, from the Bible, right? And that's a big point, with Advaita Vedanta, or as they say here, Advaita Vedanta. Every being has the sense of I am, I exist. That's what we have in common. And that's what we are, in a sense. And to get in union with, your big mind, the oldest koan and the oldest way to that is, that I know of, and very central to Advaita Vedanta, which is non-dual Vedanta, non-dual Hinduism, is who am I? The earliest koan. It's, I can't remember exactly what Ramana Maharshi said, or Nisargadatta. Nisargadatta is great too. If you haven't read any Nisargadatta, he is great. But what they say is that honing in on that feeling that I exist, that is the absolute. That is, it's right there with you. It's your fundamental feeling of existing. I remember once I was walking with Richard Baker, Shunryu Suzuki's successor, coming down from the hogback back into Tassara Camp Central, and I said, I don't know. We were talking about stuff. I said, well, all I know is that I'm here. And he liked that. He said, that's it. That's right. Although I heard him in a talk, but not that, a few years ago in Germany. How many years ago? 8 years ago. 8.5 years ago. Almost 9 years ago in Germany. Right, because it was April, wasn't it? Yeah, 9 years ago in Germany. Anyway, he said he preferred not who am I, but what am I. But anyway, whatever you want. So, again, those who speak, if Neil deGrasse Tyson and other people who speak out against religion say, well, that's all a bunch of crap. Well, that's fine, but, you've got no argument. Saying it's all a bunch of crap is probably as good as anything we could say. The thing is, it does not conflict with science. There's absolutely no way to prove any of that stuff except to experience it. If you don't want to try to experience it, fine. But it should cause no problem for society, for government, or for science. My dear departed friend Nils Holm, he thought the world, should not be run by scientists. Well, what they do tends to be made into weapons. But, boy, I think right now, it's a matter of everything being in balance. Science is getting pushed way out of balance now in the United States, which is pushing everything way out of balance. There are problems, but rather than, trying to balance things, it's like just cut off half of it or something like that. That's not going to work too well. Let's see what else old Jack comes up to. All right. This is from Ibn Arabi, 1165 to 1240. The religious laws are like candles which light the way, and when the path is cleared and trodden, one no longer needs the light. That is well said. That is well said. It's, to me, well, hell, as Suzuki said it, it's hints. They're hinting at that religious teaching is just hinting at something greater, that we are something greater, and that the purpose of our practice, I remember once Richard Baker saying, is to make the stage wider. Anyway, I just wanted to wrap on this stuff and say that to think about talking about religion in a scientific way. I don't mean to prove that meditation works. There's a lot of research on that, and there's a lot of people doing that, and looking at whether it makes people calmer or happier, whether they can generate alpha waves and theta waves and this and that, help them and make them happier and healthier. I'm not really talking about that, although that all might be true. I'm just my main point is there's no conflict between religion and science, and also thinking of religion as being theistic is also way too narrow. There's a lot of non-theistic religion. There's tons of it. Of course, here in Indonesia, where I live, I got to all pretend it's theistic. The Hindus have to pretend there's one God, and the Buddhists have to pretend that Buddha's a God? No, a person. But it's just a little lip service here and there. And because it's 80% Muslim here, and it's all working out pretty well here, and things are peaceful. People get along, let me tell you what I did last night. I went to the Ogo Ogo ceremony. OGOH. Every neighborhood builds an Ogo Ogo. Mainly the young men in it build it, right? And an Ogo Ogo is like monsters from... All right, I just asked ChatGPT to tell you all what Ogo Ogo are. They're large, often monstrous statues made of bamboo, paper, and cloth and rebar and stuff. Listen, some of them are really big and will have, some mythical character, with his one of his feet up in the air and leaning over, and they'll be carried by a whole bunch of young guys, like on a giant web of bamboo. There's no motorized vehicles, and some of them are really big, but they're small ones. But like you'll see younger kids, and sometimes they've been moving more girls into participating on it. Anyway, they're paraded in Bali on the eve of Nyepi. So that was Saturday night here in Nyepi. It was the new moon, and then once all that's over, and I walked about 1.5 miles with a cane to see the Ogo Ogo in front of the Bali Hyatt. They cleared out a big area, and that was only one of the many gathering places for Ogo Ogo, because Bali is divided into neighborhoods. That's the real functioning unit of Bali, the Banjar. And every neighborhood, and they're pretty small, every neighborhood makes a Ogo Ogo, and they come to a central place, and each one of them gets their time to sort of, they carry it around and bounce it up and down, and it's neat. And there'll be a gamelan band with it, or orchestra with it. It's really fun. I walked there, and I guess I got there about 8:15 or something, and it went on for a couple of hours. And that was walking there, and I used a cane. It was dark because Nyepi, it's what happens the night before Nyepi. Nyepi is when Bali goes dark. I mean, it's no lights, no airplanes, no vehicles on the road. You can't leave your house, so there were a lot of stores, on the night before. It doesn't start until 6 in the morning the next morning for 24 hours. It was over at 6 in the morning this morning. This is Sunday. And, but, a lot of lights are off before then because they don't want to come back and have to turn them off later. So it was very dark. And so I walked with the cane, just, because there's a lot of places you can trip on things and fall down and stuff. It was good, though. There wasn't much traffic. And the streets are much, much better for walking than the sidewalks here. Anyway, it was great. I watched the whole thing. I got next to a fence so I could sort of lean on the fence some. And I watched every one of them come in and go. And just Google it. You can see all sorts of examples of Ogo, O-G-O-H. And then I walked back. I was getting a little tired. I remember it was over at 10:36. And it was, a pretty big crowd there. And one thing about being in a crowd, it was 90% Balinese. And I'm sure there were non-Hindus there, just local people, just to watch it. The one thing about being in a crowd, I've been in a lot of crowds here, people are very well behaved. I have never seen anybody acting bad. I was talking to Katrinka about that. She said, well, one year we were we were at one of these things, and there was there was a little scuffle between some people there, and we didn't know what it was. But all right, after in our 12th year here, we can remember one example in a crowd of some people being angry at each other or something. But it didn't even make an impression on me. And, there's not drunk people. There's not angry people. It's just, just low key and, santai, peaceful. Anyway, it was really great. And then I walked home and, God, my ankle started hurting me. But, my foot, my ankle a little bit. And I've if I keep walking, I can keep walking with that. But it usually gets better, but it didn't get that much better. But I walked about a mile back, and then the last half mile, I ran into a taxi driver parked, and I said, hey, I give you $50,000 to drive me down to Sekarwar, which was only another 15-minute walk from where he was. And he was happy at that. That's way more than a taxi fare. But you know how much $50,000 is now? It's a little over $3. Anyway, it was great. Wanted to tell you that. And then Nyepi yesterday. Wow, it was so cool. Love it. We don't light any. Well, we light some. We cheat. She lights some candles, so we have light. Oh, my God, and but it's wonderful. And last night. I went up on there's our house there's so much shade here. It's you can't see the stars so well. But there's a little terrace up on the second floor behind the guest room that we made by a building. There's a little flat section on the neighbor's roof. And those our houses are connected, and so we have a little garden there. And I could lie that I put my yoga mat out, and I lay there and looked at the stars. And about half the time, it's overcast, and it was. So I didn't get to see the amazing display of stars you get when there's no lights coming from the whole island. I mean, there'll be some, but. I look out over the city. I looked at one place. I could see some little light somewhere, maybe from a hospital window they didn't cover or something, a hotel. I don't know. Anyway, it was great, and I loved it. And, well, I guess that's it. And listen, I apologize for or just repeating a bunch of stuff I've said before. But it bothers me that you have these well-respected people, and I love Neil deGrasse Tyson. I love to listen to his stuff. But I just think he could use some help in talking about religion. He could expand his viewpoint, and he could use use a more scientific approach in talking about it. Not in trying to pick it apart and understand what it is, but by not just starting off with assumptions that really don't cover the subject. That just cover a part of it, and a very important part of it, and a part of it that has been, to me, what I call the disease of religion, is clinging to literalism. The literal is there to encourage us. It's hints, dealing with what can't be talked about. What, we can talk about it, but we're not going to get very far. Anyway, this has been a Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Doggy Bandita, feel like Manis, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.